Good morning, and good morning. How are you? How are you? How are you? I'm trying to still get over this, the remnants of a cold. I don't feel bad. I still kind of feel um, great, but I have this residual that just keeps hanging around, and it's still in my head. I'm not as froggy as I was, so that's kind of going. But good morning. Hoping that your weekend went well. How was it? What'd you do? What'd you do? Did you do anything special? Um, I didn't. I rested the weekend. Went to church yesterday. Had a great time. In fact, I had some people that came to visit with one of the groups that I sometimes work with, which is the Gulf Coast Diplomacy Council, and they are actually a representative from the State Department that allows other countries to come when they come to the United States. We might be one of the locations that they visit. So yesterday, they visited our church, which is Greater Little Rock Baptist Church, with Dr. Lonnie D. Wesley III as our head um, and lead pastor, and it was wonderful. We had a great time. They enjoyed themselves. They came from Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan is where they came from, and I was trying to explain to people where it's located, but it's a small country and it's located between, I guess, like the sections of Europe. It's Europe, Africa, and Asia. So it's at that juncture where this small country is. But they enjoyed themselves so much. They got to hear some great music and a great message. So they are on their way to finishing experiencing the culture of the area here of Northwest Florida, and then they'll head on to other areas of the country. I think they said they were in Vegas before that, or one of those areas of Nevada. They were out that way before they came here. So we're really fortunate to be in that position that we can sometimes entertain other countries and teach them a little bit of our culture here in the United States, and especially a little bit of the South in the Northwest area of the state of Florida. But anyway, today we're going to talk about hazard. I know you all are paying attention to all of the horrific things that are going on in California with the fires. They have just been absolutely devastating to those people who live in that area. I mean, they said there's just thousands and thousands of acreage is gone, and property, and of course anything that was contained on the property or in those homes have been demolished, destroyed. And so I really wanted to talk about what do we know about our lives that we are not in danger, because there's always a possibility of us being, faced with a hazard. And that's our word for today, hazard. And knowing that we live in what I call Hurricane Alley, so occasionally we get these horrific hurricanes. And I remember Ivan came through here not long after we had moved to the area, and oh my God, the damage it did. And probably every home in this area had a blue tarp for its roof, because at that point in time it was hard to find anyone that could put on a roof, because there was just so much demand. And many people, that's how they moved to the area, because the work was here for a long time, for just trying to get people back into their homes, or making their homes more functional and safe. And so we're going to talk a little bit about just hazardous areas. And when reading this, I found a poem. I always go out and try to find something that sheds a little light. And last week I did I think it was last Monday, I did a vlog on oxymorons and what they are. And ironically enough, I found a poem this morning that is an oxymoron. It's called Rain, Fire. Rain and fire are very much opposite each other, but it's by Conte. Good morning, Joan. How are you, my friend? Good to see you in the space. Good to see you. Good to see you. You know, I keep trying other locations in my house to see how good the reception is, because sometimes I don't know, they have a glitch and, you know, some kind of hiccup goes on and I'm either tossed out. So I'm trying another area today. But I hope you had a wonderful weekend. But rain fire is an oxymoron. And this poem is by Comte Valos. Comte Valos. And it was written in or at least placed online in November of 2007. And here it is. It says, I can hear the thunder, but I think it might be fire. It's the middle of the winter, but it's starting to get brighter. And I can see the lightning. It flashes from afar. It falls and falls and falls again. It's coming from the stars. I still hear no sounds of sirens. No need to sound the alarms. It's too far away from us. It will never cause us harm. Everyone likes to think they are safe, but I'm not so naive. I think it might rain fire on this quiet winter's eve. Isn't that a great poem? And pretty much assesses the fact that sometimes we don't know to run. Hey, good morning, sweetie. We're okay. We're not in the fire. Families is doing good. Great. I know I tried to contact you when I saw that you mentioned. That's my niece in California, and her name is Kim. And I was wondering, I saw where she posted herself as being safe, she and the family, but I didn't know what else was going on. But thank you so much. I love you dearly. Give me a call and we'll chit chat, okay? But anyway, this is pretty similar to what those people who are living in those fire zones are going on. And they've named off so many different areas. And, you know, I've been to California many times with work and everything, but I've never lived there. So I don't know, but I know what happens here when we have, you know, a hurricane comes through and power lines are down. And I remember coming home after, you know, even though we were let to leave work. And I remember a power line being across the driveway. And I remember my friend saying, well, you know, we got to go check on you. And I had already gotten home before the power line fell, but just watching those kinds of things, and they one thing, it's like one thing starts something else, which starts something else. And that's what it was. It's just, I can only imagine what everyone is feeling that's gone through what they're going through right now. It's just a horrific thing to happen, and then to have all your things gone, you know, or many of them of your things, or in many instances, they're saying most things people have are gone. So let's talk about that thing called hazard. And hazard, it says, is danger or risk. Sometimes when we move someplace, we live in an area, we don't know all the dangers. We take a chance, you know, just like this poem says. We think we're safe. We think we're going to be all right. But when do we know when it's time to get out? I remember when one of the hurricanes arrived, and it came like, maybe there were two of them actually. I think it was, you know, I want to say David or whatever it was, but the first hurricane came and then a second one came maybe shortly after that. Well, I was so traumatized from the first one, I tried to get out. Well, getting out, there was no such thing as getting out, because if you in this area, everyone knows there's like a main thoroughfare which leads up to Alabama, which is 29. Well, 29 was like, it was a parking lot. And even though I had a full tank of gas, I still ran out of gas, because I was on that road for probably 14 hours just trying to get out. And finally, I was able to talk with somebody who showed me how to get out and go and get in someone else's car that was further up, and we just chit chatted with each other, and it made it work. But I don't even know how we did that back then, but we did somehow or another. I had cover, and that's what you have to believe. If you're a believer, that, and I believe that God wouldn't forsake me. So it's time to do something. Time to do something. So when we look at this thing called hazard, it says it's dangerous. It's a danger or risk. It's when something is peril. It's a menace to what may be able to go positively forward. There's difficulty in it. Sometimes there's pitfalls. We don't know the pitfalls, but we stay around. And it says there's jeopardy to it, endangerment, and sometimes derailment. If we've been through something, we know what it is. Once we've been through it, we can attest to it happening to us. And no, not all things happen the same way. I'm quite sure each one of those families have their own experiences as to how they were able to get out, how some family members were not. And I certainly send up prayers to those who have lost loved ones out in California, because I do feel that is just the ultimate thing of just loss. It's one thing to lose possessions. You can find something else later on that you like easily as well, and maybe even love it. But the thing about losing people, that has to be such a deep hardship. So when we break the word down this morning, and I'll ask you, are you stuck? Have you ever been in a place where you didn't know that there were hazardous things lurking, such as through the weather, the rain, the fire, the wind? And if you've ever lived through any catastrophe, you know what it is. Harsh. Oh, come on now, Joan. That is. It is harsh when we think about what we've been through. Some of us, we can talk about, well, this happened and that happened, and we know our experience. I said happenstance. When we sometimes look at a hazard, it is a happenstance. We take a chance to live wherever we live, but happenstance means that it's going to happen. It's a coincidence, especially that is due to chance, meaning it doesn't necessarily mean that even if you weren't home, it wouldn't happen, but by you being home, you experienced it differently, so it says that happenstance is an accident, it's an occurrence, and it's an occasion, an event, a fluke, because sometimes we've been in kind of fluky situations. We didn't know it was coming, but dang, when it came almost with the vengeance. We knew how bad it was. And then we talk about it being an episode, because a lot of times when we're experiencing things that are horrific, we only need one time. And sometimes that's all that is given. It's a one-time occurrence. And we deal with it, My A of hazard is absurdity. Sometimes we're absurd in that we choose to do what we do. But life is full of chances. And so sometimes our chances are we just do it. We're not going to worry about it. We can't worry about what we do not know, what we cannot control, what we do not see, what we do not own. We just experience what it is that we experience. So absurdity talks about the quality or state of being ridiculous or wildly unreasonable. Let's face it, sometimes we can be unreasonable because we want to do what we want to do. Like for myself, I was listening to somebody who was saying anxiety. Oh, that's good. How many of us have had anxiety over where we live or something that's happened to us where we're living? Somebody was talking about on the TV the other day is that one of the things they own is a small island out in the middle of, when I don't even remember what ocean it was in, or all I could think of is that couldn't be me. I'll take my chances. This is Sandy now. I'll take my chances on more land, less water. I want to see the water, but I don't necessarily want to be in the water. So To me, that would be, for me, that would be absurdity. That would be absurdity for me. So absurdity talks about the quality or state of being ridiculous or wildly unreasonable. For me, that would be unreasonable and wildly unreasonable for them. So absurdity talks about being preposterous, uh, stupidity, insanity, because sometimes some of our requests that we follow through on have some absurdness to them, foolishness, unreasonableness, craziness. We sometimes make decisions that have a long effect. We can't even get beyond where it is that we would be going, but we know it's crazy, and we do it anyway. We do it. My Z of hazard as we're going forward is for zany. And zany says that sometimes we have to even laugh at ourselves of what we've chosen to do. There's no way I would think of doing this, but when I was younger, I probably would. I wanted like just almost like a little boxed house. I always thought that would be so cute, like almost like a tiny home. Only because I didn't have any money. Zigzag, okay, going here and going there. Yes, Joan. For me, when I was younger, we lived in what I call a three. It was a 3-story cold water flat. A 3-story cold water flat, and for those who don't know, or it could be 2-story, cold water flat meant that all they had in the house was cold water. There was no running hot water. So therefore, my mother would boil the water on the stove. And so there was always a pot of water being boiled. And that water was going to be used for everything that she did. She had a washing machine that she stood up, and she did all this kind of stuff too. But, those were the times that we grew up in. You grow up in the 60s in New York. That's what you had, and cold water flats were very popular, meaning the landlord didn't really have to do much, okay, except give you a room and a key. And most of the heat at that time would be like those little radiator heaters. So we had the little radiator heaters, and some of us might have had a little grill. I'd call it like a grid grill kind of thing that was embedded in the floor, and the heat would come up through that. But it wasn't as if it was really warm, So we knew to dress warm in the house. And I remember my mother, when she packed us in bed, it was just so much blankets. So it was heavy, and it was like we couldn't even get out. We were almost trapped inside. But that's how we grew up. That's how we grew up. But I always said, but when I leave home, I'm going to get me a small little place, and it's going to be just enough, but it's going to be so small it's easy to heat, and hot water will be there. And I had all of these ideas. Well, years later, how do you see how popular the little homes have become? That's because big homes cost so much, and the utilities have gone up to make it outrageous, and even to buy a home has become ridiculous. So there it is. There's my zaniness. My zaniness was when I was younger and not now. So zany talks about it, amusingly unconventional, okay, and idiosyncratic. It says it might be eccentric or weird, peculiar, quirky, unconventional, strange, absurdity, mad, ridiculous, wacky, or plain out off the wall. That's what sometimes we do. We have these ideas of things that we think would be for us until we get into them. Sometimes it might be where we live, how much space we have, how far it is to get to work or to get to the grocery store. Because sometimes I keep trying to tell people, the further you're away from the centralized areas of the city, or where you can find gas and food and all those kinds of things, what I call the necessities, the cheaper the land is and the purchasing of a home. But then you also have to factor in how long is it going to take you to come in, and who else is on the road. So then you find you're in traffic coming in to the area where everyone else might already be. So there you go. My A in hazard is for avoidable. If I can avoid certain things, I'm going to do it if I can. But a lot of times we just as curious, humans, we want what we want. And so in our curiousness, we end up not always avoiding some of the things that we should avoid. We end up having more things than we need, going further than what we should. But nonetheless, we feel happy when we're in that space and we kind of, and I used to do this when I lived in New York. I would block out how far I had to go to get wherever I was going, only because I was happy when I got to either side. Okay. I was happy at home, and then I was happy once I got where I was going. So the payout was okay. It's just that I knew my music. I would play music. I would do things to entertain myself. And acknowledgement is good, to be acknowledged. Yeah, because sometimes we have to know, if we can avoid stuff, it says that we evade it, but we also acknowledge it. So that's good. We escape it. Sometimes we escape where we have to go back to every single day. So, in fact, I don't know if you've seen this, but there's been a resurgence where all of a sudden living in the core of the city is not only kind of classy and avant-garde and kind of the now thing to do. You're finding that people are doing that, and it's more and more and more expensive to be a part of the inner city than it was at one time, because there was an exodus for everybody to move out, and the malls made it kind of purposeful. But then they brought the malls back into the city areas. And so you find that there's malls that are also, even though they have all of those stores, and they struggle too, because I've walked through a couple of them, and they're not as loaded with people, except for maybe the holidays. The holidays, you find a lot of people. But when we can't avoid things, we do. It says to keep it away from us, to avoid it, to escape, prevent, eliminate, to dodge things. Sometimes we don't even know how to dodge. Good morning, Adelia. Good morning. Good morning. Today our word is hazard. And so far I said it was happenstance. Sometimes we're dealing with absurdity. There might be a zaniness to it. We can avoid it. That's what we're on right now. And avoid also talks about to keep away from, to shun it, to elude it, to escape it, to avert it, to divert it, and bypass it if you can. And what I find is that lately it's hard to bypass much. You even if there's certain things that you've always used and wanted, you might find that only limited locations have them. Like I have this water that I love. I can't find the water anymore. It's called Smart Water Cucumber Lime, and I love it, but now it's hard to find. It's hard to find, and I'm thinking that they might discontinue it, but they determine, sometimes business determines what you're going to have access to and they may even have done well in it, because you could always see that it was selling out. Awareness is very good, because sometimes we do need to be made aware of what is a hazard. Where is it? How far is it away from us? I'm quite sure all of those people who are looking out their back doors or front lawns and saying, oh my God, how far is that away from us? Scary situations. I remember when I lived in Italy, we lived in Moda Sant'Anastasia, but it was maybe 12 miles from the base. But we lived on the top floor, which at that time we were really doing really cool stuff. But there you go. There's that vision of Sandy. But anyway, I said, that's where I want to live, on the top floor. So we did. We got that top apartment and we loved it. But we could literally stand on the balcony of our, on the backside of our apartment, and we could see Mount Etna with all of the lava coming down the mountain. And, we were probably, and Etna's close to Padara, which was closer to, each other than they were to us. Nonetheless, when you go back through the history of Mount Etna and its lava flow, at one time it would just destroy various cities. And I think Catania at one time might have been one of those areas that was destroyed by the lava that just continued to, fall into the city. And that's what we have to look at. How close are we to danger? Do we realize that there's a possibility out there? So we look at my R of hazard. In this instance, I put down reason. We have to be reasoned to live where we live, travel to what areas we want to travel to and stay. But it says as an explanation, it's a reason. We give it reason. We give it desire. We give it, that's where I always wanted to be, or whatever we put with it, that's what we do. And it says it's a statement that is given to explain a belief or an act, because we've decided that's what we want to do. That's it. Restrained. Oh, that's a good word. Because sometimes we restrain ourselves on where we're going to live, even though it might be a hazardous area or a dangerous area. And I don't know if you all remember Margaret Williams, but Margaret Williams she was from this location here in Florida, and she was well-known fighting the super fund that was off of, I'm trying to think what street that was. I believe it's Fairfield, off of Fairfield. She was in that area there. She was really working diligently on, sounding the alarm. Hey, look, this is a super fund. You all have been throwing, things in our water, and it's been affecting the population of this area forever. Recognized. That's a great word. And she was recognized. Thank you so much. And she went to South Africa. She went to DC. She was on committees all over the country doing things that really talked about how do I expose that, there's hazardous waste and materials near my residents and other people that live in this area. And people they were dying from cancers and all kinds of things that pretty much said that it was a toxic location to live in. I met her through, yes, absolutely, you did. Yes, Joan. And she was the sweetest and smartest lady. She was always funny too, because when I first came here, I was always fast talking and walking fast. And she would just say, Sandy, slow down. I need to talk to you. And I slowed down and she talked to me. We became the best of friends. She was almost like my mother here in Florida. And she would talk to my mother and said, I got her. Don't worry about it. I got her. And I remember my daughter was really little, and when I went out of town, she watched my daughter. So sometimes we have to realize, what is our reason for where we live? What is our reason for what it is that we want? And is it reasonable enough that we would continue to stay when we know that there's a hazard opportunity waiting on us? We don't know. So the reason talks about it being an explanation, sometimes an argument, a justification. How many of us want to be justified, or looking at how can we make it make sense, as they say, make this make sense, like when the math ain't mathing, how do you do it? So it talks about the rationale, the accounting, the case, the excuse, and the appeal. Because sometimes we are just appealed by what we see and what we want by what we see. And therefore we'll stay right there. There's you can't move us. But for me, if I, was in a house, and I'm just saying this now because I'm not emotionally attached to it, I don't know if I could rebuild there, especially if I know everything is, the remnants of what it is that I had. I may say that I want to start anew, and that may be in a new location and everything. And then how do we look at where we're moving to doesn't have the same possibility of a hazard. We don't know. And so I guess you live for what you do know. And what you do know is that for me, I say I got cover. You know, the Lord's going to look out for me. You know, he won't leave me. He won't forsake me. And I look at it that way. And maybe that's how I'll get through it, you know, but since I'm not faced with it, I don't know what my idea would be. I'm quite sure I would be like everybody else, full of emotion. So after the reason, the last thing we talk about, how do we offend or defend ourselves against danger? At some point in time, we need to look back through how reasonable we are, how practical, how experienced, how are we handling our business, and realizing that there may be risks. Sometimes we are in stuff and we don't know the risk that's involved. But once we've experienced something, then we do know that there's risk involved. I know that living in the area that we live in says that hurricanes are going to come every so many years. We're going to have one. It may be extremely bad, and I may end up again with a tarp roof and, water damage and this and that and the other thing. I know that. Devastating. Yes, that's a good word, because what's going on in California is it's terribly devastating. We've been through some of it. We've been through some of that in this area. Other people can talk about what things have happened and how it changed lives. And, usually catastrophes like this, the rain, the rain, the fire, and the wind, are elements that really have the possibility of destruction. That would be another D, the destruction. So danger talks about the state of not being protected from injury, harm, or evil. And sometimes, let's face it, things happen to us. My prayer is that it wasn't that it was humanly started. That would be my prayer. That once they investigate that with the task force that they're putting together, that those fires will not be ones that can be traced back to individuals who just decided they were going to, set something on fire. That would be devastating. Yes. So danger talks about it being risk, putting things in jeopardy, the trouble that it causes, the parallel that it presents, or parallels that it presents, the endangerment that exists, the impairment, the harm's way, the vulnerability, and then most of all, the fact that there's the exposure, that you've been through something. So anyway, that was today's word, and it weighed heavily on me watching over the weekend all of the stories that were being told about, people that had become, almost, angels to others, only because they weren't worried about what they didn't have any longer. What they worried about was keeping lives together, and that made it certainly important. But I love you guys. I appreciate you so much. I want you to have a wonderful day. Examine everything that you can that you might think is potentially hazardous around your house, for yourself. Look out for yourself when you're getting in and out of your car. But be careful. Be mindful of where you're at all times. Okay? I love you. I'll see you on Wednesday. I see you this Wednesday. I am back. Happy New Year for those who didn't see me last week. But we're ready for another, what I would call a God-fearing year of having fun online, doing Are You Stuck? And if you don't do anything else, you have to send no money, but it would be lovely if you just hit the share button and let this message be shared. I love you guys. I appreciate it very much. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.